Welcome to another episode of Ask the Expert on Contingent Workforce LinkedIn group. I have an awesome topic today, a little bit actually scary, but I think you're going to be really excited about listening in on the future of AI and talent acquisition and contingent workforce management. And I found you the best guy to talk about this topic. He's a friend of mine that I've known for many, many years in our industry, and one of the smartest guys I know. Actually started as a software engineer and then got into this wacky world of recruitment and staffing and contingent workforce management. So I'm going to pass it to you. Welcome, Praneeth, to Ask the Expert. But I'll let you talk about your background because it's a unique way to get into the staffing industry.
Well, thanks a lot, Jeff, for inviting me. It's been a while. I'm in the video world, but I'm glad I'm back starting with you. Yeah. So my background is a little bit weird because I started as an engineer. I still consider myself as an engineer because I still write code when I can and build some Chrome plugins, write some scrapers, or do something as all my way all day long. But truly, I think the personal experience in the recruiting industry, which was super bad with a recruiter, kind of pushed me saying that why is world so bad? Is it just me? I went ahead and interviewed 1,500 people after that, and I figured out everybody has similar or really bad problem. So through some pivots and some shitty experiments, I would say, one thing led to other, and I attempted to actually build unknowingly a vendor management system back in 2008 and won a contract with state of Texas back in those days. And in my naivety, I barely was able to execute it. I wish I was able to do that better now then. But long story after that, built a lot of applications, become a consultant through product and kind of being a fractional CPO and a CTO for many incubated startups here in Austin. After that, launched a prototype at South by Southwest, which was about using data science to predict recommendations around you and creating virtual recruitment from your LinkedIn, from your Facebook profiles. Fast forward, pivoted that into a recruitment marketplace, sold that to one of the companies in our space, which was in Contingent, especially in the top 100 list, which was Compunal Staffing.
Yeah.
That gave me a baseline and a background, go deeper. Unfortunately, I became partly a salesperson selling products there and optimizing a lot of tech and revamping the end-to-end, bringing a lot of data science into the company and revamping a lot of existing tech to increase the number of placements for recruiters and also enabling that into more of talent pool solutions. Fast forward after that, I finished my time there, launched Will Hire, which was a and then came the wave of direct sourcing. I was fortunate to write that. I think it's still going on, but amazing team, which I think I was super lucky through COVID, which was in July 2020. And with that scary moment of launch, everything worked out in a favor of the team and us. And we got acquired into Pro Unlimited, which is now called Magnet, which is an absolutely amazing company. I learned a ton of things around how enterprises see MSP programs internally and what are the day-to-day problems through that process, and had an opportunity to work there for 6 months. And then I took a pause from that and went off to figure out what I'll do next.
Well, it's fascinating, and I've known you through a big chunk of that story. We met when you were at Compunal and working with them on the staffing side of things, and then of course, what a great story as one of the leaders in direct sourcing space to go out and build one of the leading technologies in the direct sourcing space, which was acquired by Magnet. So, I knew your technology background and you're very much use engineering mindset and you're a scientist when it comes to this stuff. So, and then after direct sourcing, I know we talked about AI and your fascination with it and how it's now starting to really come into the forefront in our industry. And so I know you're starting something up and thinking about things. So what are you working on now with AI, with an AI focus?
I think it's like we are back in early 90s or late 90s and 2000s, like every person you talk to is running a .com startup. That's where we are. And so not to be cheesy, but I'm also the one other guy trying to think the process of how AI is applied, especially to the contingent and talent acquisition world. And there's so many things around that, which is more I call as an experiment. And I do want to correct, I never considered myself a scientist, or I'm not seen one, or I don't practice any of those things, because scientists, I read this book which explains the mindset of scientists with deeper whys, and how much patience they usually have and the mental models they have. I have none of that patience in my life. Yeah, and I'm not an R&D person. I probably try to figure out a problem solution, a deeper problem solution, and go figure out a technology adoption towards this and find a solution and a business around that. So just want to
I
make
stand corrected. I stand corrected. And yes, you are a doer versus methodical, long-term thinker that may never bring things to market, right? So that's what is the fascinating thing about you, and always has made great conversations. I've always enjoyed our conversations. Is you're always thinking what's happening, but then in a very practical sense, and have steps towards making it a reality. So, what are you working on now?
So I've been in a journey of research, I would say, in terms of trying to figure out the basic problems. I think I toyed around democratization of human identity, professional human identity, as one of the challenges which I started back in 2008, trying to write 300 crawlers and trying to create a free form search engine and compensating people for that same tokenized model. But through my journey, I fell in love with the AI and LLM models. AI is an overused term almost across industry, but more of technically the large language models. And I think everybody who actually sees the news or reads a paper probably knows what it is by now. But I think the that's what we were, or I have been researching for the past couple of months, and it's fascinating. What are the possibilities around that to apply to recruiting, talent acquisition, or in terms of contingent, more specific? There are so many use cases that we are seeing. We are not there yet publicly to tell what it is about. What we are doing, but I think we found some experimentation through the experimentation results as such to how AI can be applied in a completely different sense to solve different set of problems. And I think one thing which we are more fascinated about within the journey was learning how challenging is it actually to make voice work within the AI. How futuristic can you get with the voice? Where is it applicable? What is it? What is applicable of that in our industry, in our practices, recruiting as in general, talent acquisition, or can it go beyond that? Those are some experimentations that we are doing from a deep tech research, also a little bit behind the scene of as such to what is possible, what's not possible, what is our limitations, how do you actually bring empathy into a very robotic conversation, how do you create a characterization and build that into a not so human conversation that we have all seen samples of.
Yeah,
How do
because
you
we call it a people business. And I've said that many times, that this is a people business, and it can't be 100% disintermediated that the technology interacts with the candidates. You gotta, even though it's going to be that way for a big chunk of it, you have to make it feel like a people business, and that there's human interaction there. So empathy into the process and conversation. Yeah.
that's like the super challenging part, I think, which is super fascinating right now, because everything is like bleeding edge right now in that space. And I think the true sense of AI that people have used in marketing for the last 10 years is now trying to at least come to life, just scratching the surface of it. So that's more fascinating in that journey right now.
Oh, that's so cool. So, you mentioned there's lots in the newspapers, lots of headlines on AI. There's hype about it. There's fear about AI and all sorts of things. But there's it's coming to us in a real reality sense. So, thinking about how do we demystify it, or how do we reduce the hype and the marketing out there, and start to what is the current state of AI in its maturity, and how people are using it in our industry?
Uh, that's a really
Or
long
is it
question.
being used yet?
I think it's been used is the short answer. But I think the question is long enough, so I'll see how I can answer that, right? First, with the fear, which is an easy
Yeah.
thing to answer, I think. Back in the days, how Apple has transformed the whole communication aspect of how humans communicate today in the world, and how addicted you are to your smartphone, which was not the case if you use your Nokia 3315s, is a transformation that we went through of how our lives have completely changed after that. And then, so I think that's kind of a personalized impact on lives is what's happening. I think there's a big chunk of it. And when those transformations does happen, few businesses get retransformed, few professions get retransformed. It's not eliminated in any fashion, but there is a need for upskilling and reskilling, which is the most important need. As a primary example, like I think before Stack Overflow, as a developer, I still remember my days. If you want to find a technical answer, you have to go into Yahoo groups, or sometimes very specific. I don't think the softwares even exist, like the
Yeah.
forums, like
Yeah.
the specific forums where you find an answer. And it's so difficult to find an answer because you have to post something and wait for somebody to respond. That too was not a large amount of interaction in those groups. But today, companies like Stack Overflow, pre chat gpt has
Yeah.
changed. But what chat gpt has changed for us across the world, I think at least the bump of adoption it gave is the art of possibility has changed. And what art of possibility with that OpenAI or similar companies now, where you can also build out your custom models, is giving an opportunity as such to what can you automate to respond. How fast can you get an answer for the same thing without typing and talking, or even typing and finding out the detailed answers. Like a simple example for me was when I was recently doing my Europe trip, I actually used ChatGPT to actually say my preferences, and it generated my whole trip. And I think I've used 70% of it in
Wow.
planning. So,
Yeah.
so that's like a really simple example through this process. And then I was kind of trying to figure out an exercise for a product manager recently. And it was fascinating. I gave what kind of company is that we were attempting to build, not in detail even, and what is the role of this person, and what kind of challenges they might even attempting to solve. How do I actually vet this particular person, because I have a bunch of potential candidates? Can you help me write up an exercise? 50%, 60% of my job was done because it would have taken me another hour or two to write that whole
Yeah.
description.
Just to start, right?
Yeah.
Just to
So
start the
that
conversation.
50% of that work is eliminated. Same with content. Like how many content copywriters, where either you'll still use an exclusive industry copywriter to write your content, but that person's job has reduced from an all-day work to probably just 1 to 2 hours of work at the end of the day, or even generating websites or any part of this, right? So what's coming to us is in the fear faction is more of opportunity to reskill. Like if you go to Upwork and search for bubble developers, which are no-code developers, or voice flow developers, which are latest techs, which have upgraded themselves in enabling you to build AI agents, or enabling you to launch sites faster or applications faster. Numerous of them have reskilled themselves, and these people were WordPress developers in the past, who are now transformed into AI-based website developers,
Yeah.
no-code solutions, or product managers. Everybody's building things faster. So I think it's more of a reskilling rather than a non-skilling, and I think that's the biggest part for us in terms of hype cycle. I think there's a lot of hype of understanding. The hype is real, by the way, which means I've practically used and seen and adopted those examples, and I think it's coming our way.
Yeah.
But how you're going to eliminate what is reality within the hype versus not is going to be taking some real case examples and trying it out. If you didn't try it out, you have to try it out to see and how it applies to your solution. There's nothing like somebody can sell you, oh, I'm using AI in staffing, I can staff better. That's BS.
Yeah.
Like somebody has to really clearly answer how it is done. What tools are you using? Can you show me some metrics and how it has optimized it? And how are you dealing with diversity within that? Is it biased, unbiased? There's so many. It is data-driven approach now, more and more clearly. No more hype cycle in marketing and sales process.
It's amazing. Like, are you finding that existing applications are starting to utilize and say we have AI in certain pieces of our processes, or are there third parties that are add-ons to existing tools like ATSs, VMSs, etc., HRIS systems that are being added on, or that are bringing AI into it? What are you seeing the market as you've done some thinking about this?
So specific to our industry, I think especially in ATSs, it's obvious, right? The common use case across the industry, across the world, every person in our industry can think about and can do and is utilizing today is upgrading where you write your job description is automated for most part, as long as your intent is clearly captured. Just keep in mind again how clearly that is your intent, which means if you are a recruiter who is trying to build a job description and you are imagining this is the intent and your intent is wrong, your job description is wrong. It's like, again, the olden days of copying something from online and pasting it to build your job description is where it would be. But the reality, a step forward is today, there are technologies which can actually interview a hiring manager to collect the intent and then build a job description in a very subjective fashion. For an example, if I'm a recruiter, I have never done data science in my life. I don't know what is data science in reality, but I know the keywords. To get you smarter as such, you can actually use the existing technologies to actually adjust how to ask these questions so that you get the right answers, or leverage an existing package technology to give it to the hiring manager where the job description is automatically published, so you have nothing else to do than reviewing that generated job descriptions to make adjustments.
Gotcha. So once again, it fills in the gaps, right?
Yeah, that's
Knowledge often,
common.
but you
Yeah.
have to know how to utilize and ask the right questions.
Yeah, and using it and also reviewing it. Don't assume that what comes out of it is right. That's like super important as such to can you come up with a scoring model out of it, or can you actually say, can you give me an analytics out of it? I think all these are possibilities. With an ask, you can actually get that, but how do you get to that is going to be the tooling or utilizing that and reviewing that. It is in a super early stage. There are some things which are a little more complex through in the recruiting use cases, right? For an example, ability to call somebody on behalf of a recruiter so that recruiters don't have to make those calls is a use case which is worked upon almost several times across the company in sales, marketing, recruiting, everywhere. But the challenge and reality is it's not empathetic, that voice. There's empathy missing. There is a reality missing. It's more in technical terms, this is my old exercise where I built a chatbot on Dialogflow back in 2016, which enabled to reduce 30% of the requests which was coming into inbox into recruiters and HR onboarding process. But today, the Dialogflow has upgraded itself to use a bit of an AI engineering within that, but the ability to build that is still kind of a rules engine format. So it's still not digressed, but which is where you actually have to validate the companies more clearly. Is it still a rules-based engine where it fails, which means the demo will be awesome for you when you look at a product, when somebody does it. But when you look underneath this, it actually doesn't work in scale, in multiple iterations and multiple use cases. That's where it fails. And that's where the cutting or the bleeding edge is about how people are solving that last mile step problem, which takes the leap of next, which is completely autonomous. Like it's comparing Tesla's autopilot versus complete full self-driving car. So there's a lot of autopilot's capabilities now built in, but the full self-driving capabilities are not yet built in.
Got you. And that brings up an interesting conversation, is that last mile, right? A lot of technology that is built over, the last, let's say 15 years or so, 15, 20 years, has helped recruiters, talent acquisition companies get candidates to the ballpark, get them to a very shortlisted scenario, but it was usually then handed off to the recruiter, right, to get that last mile done, or an administrator to do that last mile in onboarding a candidate, etc. Right? That personal approach to it. With what you're starting to see and the more human-like interactions that AI is getting built into AI, do you think that last mile is going to be where you get that autonomous vehicle, but you get that autonomous end-to-end, you got them through the ballpark, you shortlist them, you selected the one candidate on board, and you start on Monday? Do you think that last mile is
It's
close?
already there. It's super close. And in fact, the one instance you said, I will shortlist it. Tell me, if I'm a recruiter, I'm given a data scientist job. I have 7 data scientists. All of them went to premium colleges. All have done academic research. All have done in a enterprise business environment, has built models and neural networks, and also has done the latest LLM models of multiple multiple implementations around that. How do you differentiate who is best and who is not? Like, what knowledge do I have as a recruiter to select who is best or not? That's a really tough problem. This is where I think the current generation of an AI, or the next mile of that last mile of AI, is like super important. In we came from the text-based matching to the TF-ID of roles of scoring systems, to next level of the contextual or matching through our HR XML formats. Sovereigns of the world have solved that very deeply enough as they themselves matured as a company. But what's next is like the text-based thing won't work anymore, because today there are solutions for job seekers which will enable you to actually randomly and instantaneously create a beautiful resume which will give you 100% score based on the job description. So which means you'll get everybody 100%. So how are you going to make selection? Like that. And then if you want to invest in assessment softwares through at an early stage recruiting cycle in the flow, it's expensive. You can't just flow through 1,000 candidates and it becomes a large amount of bill. When you compare the cost of acquisition, it simply goes up, right? So I think the latest technologies enable you to solve that. In building co-pilots for recruiters is kind of a premise where people have been working very aggressively, and co-pilots for sales, co-pilots for recruiters, co-pilots for customer service. These are the things which have been deeply worked upon to solve that. And some other example also is like, when you think about all these things done, recruitment marketing efforts is still in an infancy stage of really adopting it. I've seen so many instances through my journey, even in the direct sourcing, where you give a tool which will enable you to post jobs and manage all these things. But how do you manage a cost of an applicant and acquisition and a budget? My mind has been blown with even 20 years of people in recruiting cannot manage a basic budget management of recruitment marketing. Sure. So there is an intelligence which is getting developed today, and there is also in the market which will enable you to reduce that process of intelligence or intellectual ability that you residently have to develop. You don't have to develop. You can rely on these tools to make those decisions better.
I think you've answered some of what I'm going to ask next in that last section there, but you've taken some time that to think, to research. You've liaisoned with some of the smartest people around this topic as well. What's getting you super excited? I know you're working on some new stuff, which is exciting, but what are you most excited about on this topic of AI?
I think there is what excites me is, I think, the future of the next 10 years, right? I think we are going to have I think I read a marketing article, this is not mine, but tectonic shift in the behavior of how enterprises, businesses, people, professions will act and operate in the next 10 years is going to completely change. I think we need to go back and start looking at Star Trek again, because I still remember an episode where there is an iPad with this guy, and that was done 20 years earlier before the iPad came out. So I think a lot of that reality is going to come to life to us in the next in multiple areas of healthcare and several other aspects of it. But I think the most important thing for us in our industry is I've seen some conversations in our industry, even all the way to the procurement and spend management cycle of optimization of tail spend management becomes fully automated, where it is able to predict and create recommendations as such to not like a machine learning recommendations, but actually making actions on behalf of you too. And also some elements which I joke about with my friends in the MSP world this recently was, can we run every intake calls an MSP runs today through an AI agent? So
Potentially,
right,
right?
so that seems to be a possibility, which is an efficiency into the process where it's not just one call and done. It's kind of some agent which is enable you to answer this continuously, enabling your suppliers to actually perform better through that submission process to increase your response rate to any of these things. The key metrics of KPIs that we measure around can be improved even at the minutest level with minimalistic adoption of these technologies.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing, right? And it saves everyone's time, everyone in the process's time, right? If you start thinking about it, be it the manager, be it the program team, be it your suppliers, and the end result will be better quality as well, right?
Yeah,
So
I
very,
think
very fascinating.
interesting age, and I think we've just went through a large transition, or still going through a transition of direct sourcing, as I remember last. But I think this is also going to give a humongous boost to that direct sourcing journey as it moves forward, along with a lot of transformation. I still can't predict and think about how our industry will adopt, because our industry naturally has an adoption problem for the ages.
Yeah.
But I think we had some very interesting conversations with staffing leaders in almost near to $1 billion staffing companies, and it was interesting how they are excited about implementing these technologies right now.
It's great. So there's a lot of the audience is the staffing side, right? But a lot of the audience that we speak to in this forum and in the LinkedIn group is the program lead side. So, if I'm leading a contingent program right now, and I'm getting bombarded with marketing and hype and want to start and am believing it because I've used ChatGPT in certain instances or whatever the case may be, I need to start thinking about certain things and the use of AI in my program. What are some best practices to start building out a strategy around utilization of AI? Is it talking to my vendor community? Is it bringing in a consultant? Is it, buying a few of these apps that are out there with the hype that are saying AI? Like, how do I start putting a roadmap in order to use AI and get the biggest bang for my buck now and in the future, where, things will really actually be adopted or at a more mature level than maybe around the marketing and hype that we have today of a lot of things?
Um, that's a really tough question, especially with the tool sets we use today and the processes and the nature of multi-fold generation vendor management process that we have for ages adopted, right? And we still have difficulty in adoption direct sourcing, which will actually have been a breakthrough by now, almost in every program, and bringing more than 50% of it, but we haven't done that yet. So I think there is a reality to an adoption problem for the next couple of years at least we'll go through in this side. But I think if it is comes to the program management, I think I've heard from a few companies around the space who have been already excited and doing some experimentation and working on how to embed AI into the VMS world. So when you think about that, it's like think about an ATS world and the example we talked about, intent capturing all the way to generation, and then that way MSP program managers don't have to really come up with templating of job descriptions that we do in our system. That's something which is basically going to be, those are some examples, but I think the existing VMS players are like super mature in our industry, fortunately, who actually are already doing these things in one or the other capacity in transforming that existing extended knowledge from AI into embedding the technology here. So paying attention on that and adopting that is going to be useful, so that you can actually say this was a benchmark of generation of a job description to response rate. So do you want to create a new benchmark now for your response rates? Do you want to create a new benchmark for your MSP performance? How how many jobs were created and transitioned, and how successful were in filling it with an accuracy around finding the right candidates through the process of building an NPS score against all the hiring managers, how well this has happened, right?
Yeah.
So there are some key attentions to pay around like that technology adoption that is super important, but at the same time, like the examples of how you're running the program, whether you're self-managed program or whether you're non-self-managed program, uh, can you leverage in building out or adopting these technologies for some resident knowledge which doesn't get transition and humans are between that? Can you implement these technologies in one or the other fashion to implement that? And if there are vendors today, part of your ecosystem who are offering that, do test it out because all this is going to be usage modeling and you'll get locked out, but always with a grain of salt, test it out and say whether it's faking out or whether it's really doing it the job. Because one of the things you'll see is it's so easy to build prototypes in AI world today, or in application world. The real deal is actually, can it scale? Can it handle n number of scenarios to depth? So you actually have to pay a lot more attention when you're using these tools and adoptions at each stage, from sourcing all the way to even reporting or validating, or do you really, how dynamically can you go after measuring vendor performance with AI?
Yeah.
Or can you build something on top of your data lake, which you probably have or may not have, for your whole program performance? And how do you bring that to life in answering questions really quickly? Anybody across through the process about rate management or anything. I think there is a lot of things which are already near to it, which have been drilled down, and like the data oceans created like by companies today. So leveraging that and adopting that still is a challenge for us, but how well can you adopt that and transform that is going to be changed. But also on the vendor side, I think it's a time to pay attention to how you vet vendors and formulate vendors, because I think the reality for vendors is also changing. So when people are using co-pilots in recruiting space, like your top performers or mid performers or low performers, so it's no longer like the top performers will stay top. I think it's about how well they can build co-pilots or leverage co-pilots in speed and accuracy, where a single recruiter doesn't have to do that same day, same time linearly. It can be done parallelly at an exponential way. So what will that change to a program? So now you probably want to upgrade the goal sets from the vendor performance and the MSP performance heavily in bringing that to reality and driving that.
No, it's amazing. And you are correct that there is always in our industry a lot of adoption issues, and change management becomes an issue. So talking to your vendor community and making sure that they're starting to utilize AI and bringing it into the processes is on their roadmap, and maybe change out vendors if they aren't, right? So that's something that will be hopefully keeping all of us on our toes in the upcoming future, in adopting these new technologies, in being more efficient, faster, better.
Yeah, totally. And especially for light industrial programs or the high volume recruiting programs, right? The impact is right now, not like future.
Yeah.
People are seeing those experimentation, doing those experimentation, and especially people who are adopting the volume-based direct sourcing programs will see the highest amount of impact right now.
It's amazing. Okay, so my head is spinning from the conversation, Praneeth, but it's always amazing to talk to you on a plethora of topics, but in particular technology and the future of AI in our industry. So I want to thank you for joining today and having a great conversation about this. And I know we'll probably get lots of inquiries into doing another session in the near future. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. Thanks a lot, Jeff. And we haven't even talked about models in AI and technical models. I can get into that at some point and confuse people around it. Unless they are developers, they won't get it. But we can bring that to reality, what it really means.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, awesome.